Hi, I'm going to read some good quotes because I got a good bit of them saved up now. The first one is going to be from Dr. Faustus by Thomas Mann. Been reading that and really enjoying this book. Alright, let's see. Okay, so basically the idea of this passage is this guy who knows a lot about music is doing public lectures. And they're paying for the public lectures. This was an accommodating gesture since any benefit to the community was debatable, if for no other reason than the community's failure to appear, which, however, could in part be traced, as noted, to the all too specific nature of the topics treated. Wendell Kretschmar subscribed to the principle, one we repeatedly heard from lips first shaped around the English language, that it was not a matter of other people's interest, but of his own, and thus of exciting their interest, which could only happen, indeed was guaranteed to happen, if one had a fundamental interest in the subject oneself, and so, when speaking of it, could not help involving others in that interest, infecting them with it, thereby creating an interest never extant, never even suspected before, all of which was worth a great deal more than catering to one that already existed. So yeah, I really like that quote for most likely obvious reasons. And yeah, I read this book a little today because I saw 2 days ago, I think every day my university sends out an email saying what's coming up the next day. And they sent me one a couple days ago that said that my school's university orchestra was going to play Mahler's Second Symphony. And I had never made it to one of my school's concerts yet, so I bought a $10 ticket, which is what the students' prices are, and I went and saw Mahler's Second Symphony tonight, and I took a couple books with me. I wanted to kind of get in like the late 19th century German-Austrian mood, so I brought Thomas Mann, Hermann Broch with me, read those. And on the walk down there, which is like a 20-minute walk, I listened to Tod und Verklärung by Richard Strauss. So I was thoroughly in the the 1890s mood then. Let's see. Alright, I think I'll read another quote. This one's from Miklos Senkouthi, from his collection of aphorisms, The One and Only Metaphor, or Towards the One and Only Metaphor. This is number 7. The most brotherly brothers, the sole relatives, they are here beside me. Sleep and precision, the feverish fiction of possibilities and imitation. I thought that was pretty funny, given that I'm doing this recording at 1 something in the morning. It's always a good sign. And then here's another one that I thought was pretty funny. This is number 22. The most mysterious, most powerful companion of my life, apart from a constant physical malaise and episodes of vertigo, is boredom. It is hardly possible, I think, for someone to become so utterly bored as I do. At such times I ask, with crazed obstinacy, what is the other person doing now? Such a ridiculously tiny percentage of books excite me and inspire me that I can quite safely exclude reading as a pleasant experience for my life. I perennially prowl in front of the book stacks, but they only induce atrocious tedium. That is a fairly important matter and symptom. A writer for whom books cause the least pleasure. Why? I have already read the really good books, and I so much expect from new literature precisely what I would like to accomplish myself, that naturally I I am unable to find it in anyone else. And here before me stretch these long, oh so long afternoons. I cannot write just any time. What am I to do? Only people truly excite me. Portraits of women, and architectural tricks, outrageous plans, though they're again though they're again preferably things I myself imagine. And it continues to be pretty funny, but you kind of get the idea of it then. And that's one thing I like about Senkuthi. It's just, you know, at least in this and his other book, Prey, that's in English, they're just very like ridiculous and funny, as you can see from that passage there. Oh yeah, speaking of ridiculous and funny, I passed a test recently that I had to pass. Because after 2 years, you have to pass a test for pharmacy technician, and I passed it. So my reward to myself was I bought Don Quixote, the translation I first read in my high school library. It's the one by Samuel Putnam, who's the father of the philosopher Hilary Putnam. But I've tried to read several other translations, Edith Grossman, and one other one, I can't remember who it is. But I liked Samuel Putnam's the most. I remembered it from when I was younger, so I rewarded myself with that. So I've been getting back into that a little. That's part of my interest in... recently I've been trying to categorize, like, archetypal figures like Faust, Don Quixote, Don Juan, and yeah, it's been very interesting thinking about it like that. I think it's been helpful. Hamlet too. And of course they all overlap, because Faust has characteristics of Don Juan, and Don Quixote has characteristics of Faust, and Hamlet has characteristics of a confidence man and a Don Quixote. So I don't really put too much into it, but I do think it's worth thinking about a lot. Oh, and then this one here, The Idiot by Dostoevsky. This has been one of my favorite books for a while. It's one of the first really good books I read. And I just looked at the places I marked in it, and one particularly struck me in that, he wrote it back then, and this thing still just continuously recurs, and it seems like each new generation has to relearn it. Or, I mean, the main idea being they don't relearn it. Impossible crimes, but I assure you that exactly the same crimes, and perhaps still more terrible ones, existed before, and have always existed, not only here but everywhere, and in my opinion will occur for a very long time to come. The difference is that before we had less publicity, while now we've begun to speak aloud and even to write them down. Which is why it seems as if these criminals have appeared only now. That's your mistake, an extremely naive mistake, Prince, I assure you. And it's crazy that, you still have to explain this to people. Which, I guess that means they will never learn. Each endless stream of generations will never learn. And I just have one more quote that really struck me when I read it. I didn't read this much of Rousseau's Confessions. I was just kind of flipping through it. This is the book. I love this portrait of him. And I was just flipping through it, and I just turned just randomly to this and started reading it, and it struck me so instantly that this is a perfect description of me. And in some sense, that's good. Because I think any similarity you have with Rousseau is probably not a terrible one. Well, it's just funny, but and then it's bad because at the time Rousseau was writing this, he was, I think, late 50s, in his late 50s, and that means he hadn't solved it yet. And I think if he couldn't solve it, then I have a very low chance. But anyway, I'll read it because I think it's pretty funny. It's really precious. Though I was indebted to all these worthy people, I afterwards neglected them all, certainly not out of ingratitude, but owing to my invincible laziness, which has often made me seem ungrateful. The remembrance of their kindnesses has never been out of my mind, but it would have cost me less to prove my gratitude by deeds than to give them assiduous evidence of it in words. Regular correspondence has always been beyond my powers. As soon as I begin to lose interest, shame and embarrassment prevent me from repairing my negligence. Instead, I make things worse and cease to write altogether. I have remained silent, therefore, and appear to have forgotten them. Perisseau and Perichon have not even noticed my neglect, and I have always found them unchanged. But it will seem, 20 years later, in the case of Baudet, how far the vanity of a wit can carry his vengeance when he thinks himself slighted. And yeah, I just thought that was so perfect because that exactly describes what happens to me, for better or worse, for worse. And yeah, I did read more of Rousseau's Confessions from the beginning, starting from the beginning, and I was just struck with like how precious he is. And I think, and it struck me that he writes like other people I consider geniuses write, like Goethe or Leopardi or Kierkegaard or I don't know, like you get the idea. And I know they all write like each other, but I couldn't put it down to any particular thing like, oh, this is why it seems like they write like each other. I couldn't decide exactly. The only thing I could scramble together was the idea that I can't remember who said it, but it's like genius is the ability to achieve like childhood at will, or like childlike thoughts at will. And I always get the impression from these extremely intelligent people that they're, you know, just extremely sophisticated children in the most positive sense. And yeah, I think that's what I enjoy most. One of the things I enjoy most. Alright, I didn't want to make too long of a video, so I guess I'll end it here. But yeah, if you like those quotes, let me know. If you have any other good related quotes, feel free to put them down in the comments. Alright, death is a gang boss.